Welcome to Mindful Health Alternatives. My name is Darlene Young. I'm Outreach Coordinator here at CAT TV, and I'm from Arlington, Vermont. And I'm also the host of Mindful Health Alternatives. This show appears here at CAT TV on Channel 15 each month. And the goal of the series is to introduce you, our public that watch us on television or on the computer, to a less stressful lifestyle through several different methods. Our guest today is Tracy Forrest of Spirit Hollow, which is located in Shaftsbury, Vermont. And I'd like to welcome you, Tracy. Thank you for being with us. I'm really excited to have you here. And today we're going to talk about Spirit Hollow, what their mission is, what they have to offer. Tracy brought some different things with her today. She brought some sage. She's going to talk to you a little bit about sage and what it's used for.
Sure.
She also brought a rattle, and she'll talk a little bit about that. She brought some drums. There's a workshop coming up in June on workshops, and we're going to talk about what they're going to do at the workshops. They will be offered again, probably not in 2017, but, Tracy is only a phone call or an email away, and she can tell you more about what's going on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So, Tracy, without further ado, why don't you tell us a little bit about Spirit Hollow, what its mission is, how you became involved with it,
Yeah.
and what happens at Spirit Hollow.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So we are located out in Shaftsbury Hollow at the very end of the road, the last mailbox, the last telephone pole, and I have 100 acres in the middle of a 5,000 acre wilderness area.
Wow.
So it's truly an immersion in nature when you come to Spirit Hollow. And the way that I found it was with my former husband. We were looking for some land, and we lost our keys walking on another piece of land. And my ex-husband said he's never lost his keys before or since. And we had to knock on the door of a neighbor and ask for a ride home. And they said that last piece of land might be for sale. Yeah. Probably they sold to the National Forest, but we got the guy's name. We called him up. And my ex-husband said, do you have land for sale? And he said, yes. And he said, who's the realtor? And he said, no realtor. So there was no sign, no realtor. It was just for sale.
Wow.
And we ended up being able to get it for a very reasonable price. And it felt like we were kind of being reeled in by the land itself. Yeah. And part of the work that we do at Spirit Hollow is to try to connect people with nature again, because as we know, we are a culture that is very disconnected from the natural world. The way that we live our lives, the way that we get our food, the way that we treat animals, the way that all of it is a lot of disconnect from living naturally. And so we really felt like there was an energy or a spiritual aspect to the place that kind of beckoned us and met the energy that we were putting out there. And so that was in 1999.
Really? Oh my, okay.
So when the caveat about this land is that it had 40 tons of garbage on it.
Whoa.
So when we went out and saw it, we were amazed at how beautiful it was. It has 2 streams. It's just backed by all this national forest land, a lot of hardwoods and just very beautifully situated, but had just they'd never gone to the dump in like 50 years.
So
as you
everybody
can
just
imagine,
used it as a depository type
it had
thing?
been like a family camp, like go out and hang out in the summer kind of thing. And then there was one of the remaining sons was the one living there, and he just wasn't taking care of anything. So we had the 3 volunteer fire departments come out and do training exercises and burn down all the structures that were, because he did have a kind of house, if you could call it that, and there was some collapsed barns. And so we had them come and do just a giant fire. We called it our housewarming party.
Oh, that was great.
And talk about using sage to smudge. It was like a smudge for the area. So then we spent an entire summer. So it was about this time of year that we found that we got the land in 1999. So we spent a whole summer cleaning up. So we're talking about like pieces of cars and half a like if you had never gone to the dump in 50 years, what you would find.
Yep. Okay.
And so it was a big effort. We spent like 8-hour days for 3 months cleaning it up. but we knew what we had in terms of how it was perfect for the kind of work that we want to do. Drumming, singing, being in nature, making some noise so that we don't have any neighbors that would be affected by that.
Okay.
So we built a yurt from Pacific Yurts originally and lived in that yurt for a year while we built our home, which is a geodesic dome.
Okay.
So the circle structures have always kind of called to us and me. And so we created Spirit Hollow together and then had children together. And then 6 years ago, we decided to part ways. Okay. And so my ex-husband is now in Brattleboro, and I remain at Spirit Hollow with my 2 children and my various animals. And I also teach at 2 local colleges, and I teach yoga as well.
Oh, wow. So
I
you're
piece
really
my income
busy.
together just like most of us in Vermont, or many of us in Vermont.
Yeah.
Yes, so that's kind of the backstory. But my ex-husband Emery, who is now known as Ananda, and I met doing shamanic work.
Okay.
And he lived up here, and I lived in Kentucky. So I moved up here to be with him. Then in the next year, we found the land. And so, like I said, I've been there since 1999 now.
Good.
And we run shamanic training programs, which I can talk about a little bit later, but just as an overview. I run shamanic training programs from fall through the spring for adults. In the summers, and we're gearing up for that now, I run transformational camps for kids and for teens, and then offer weekend immersions and longer week-long immersions depending on the year and what's going on in the calendar.
Okay.
So
Now, can we back up just a second?
Sure.
Many of our viewers might not know what a yurt is. Can you just sort of like explain
I could
that,
describe it,
please? Okay.
you know, and if you go to the Spirit Hollow website, you can see some pictures.
Okay.
So a yurt comes from Mongolia originally. It's kind of like a Mongolian teepee in a sense.
Okay.
And they were very portable for the nomadic peoples. And they're a circular structure that has beams that all come up to a center ring, and there's a skylight. And so, again, it's a circle, which of course is a sacred geometry.
Right.
And so we wanted to have a space like that for our workshops.
Okay.
And they're very beautiful. They're like, if you were in a traditional native yurt, it would be covered with yak skins and it wouldn't have windows. And these kind of modern contemporary yurts made in several places now, but the company we got it from is out in Oregon.
Okay.
They are a kit. You can put them up basically in a couple of days. You just have to have a platform for it, and then you can raise the whole thing in a day.
Really?
But it has a skylight. We have a wood stove in it. If it was a traditional yurt, the center would be a smoke hole for the smoke to go out of.
Right.
So we have that as our meeting space and workshop space.
Good.
Yes.
That's very good. Now, when you were growing up, did you like commune with nature? I mean,
yes.
How did you follow this path? You said you were in Kentucky, correct?
I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
And then I went to school, college and graduate school in Ohio, and then I ended up getting a teaching job in Kentucky, where I was until I met my husband in my late 20s. So, so that was kind of the background. But I did spend a lot of my time as a child, even though I grew up in the suburbs, in the woods, behind my parents' house was just a pretty beautiful patch of woods. And as I trace back through my kind of journey in life, there are certain things that I think always called to me about what my soul wanted to do. And I think we all have that in us, that kind of knowing from the time we're little. And of course, we don't always keep it alive because the culture wants us to become consumers instead of become seekers or become travelers. They want us to be tourists, right? So I used to spend a lot of time in the woods and a lot of time singing and a lot of time in a kind of an imaginary realm, connecting with the trees and following the deer trails. And always, from the time I was very small, I imagined myself living, it was a cabin then, but in a cabin at the end of the road with no neighbors, in kind of a little bit of a fairy tale land. And that's actually what I've created for my life by finding and growing and building Spirit Hollow.
This is cool. This is really, really good. I had no idea that it was such a large, how do we want to say, acreage, you know?
Right, right.
It's like,
so even though it was really trashed, we were like, but look at how beautifully situated this is. For, you know, if you really, and part of my mission in life and Spirit Hollows is to, like I said, to bridge that gap between the human ones and the natural world. And to have a place that's that immersed it really has its own magic. And people who come there have their own relationship with the land or with a certain tree or a certain sitting spot or a certain place they walk. Sure. And I love that I am the steward of this place, but that the place has its own magic, its own agenda, its own kind of consciousness that calls to certain people. Right. And when you drive out there, you can begin to feel it as you get closer.
Really?
Well, that's what I think. And a lot of people comment on that. But when you do sacred work in a spot for over and over and over time, and it builds, and we're talking 18 years now, it starts to have a ripple effect. It starts to shift the energy. And so while the energy was very kind of clogged and thick when we found the place, it's cleared and opened so that, and I also believe that I hold that space, but the people who come are bringing their energy, they're bringing their love, they're bringing their tears, they're bringing their, their desires to heal the world, and that's a big part of what we're trying to do there. Yeah. Yeah.
It's phenomenal. It really is. And each person, as you said, brings their own gifts to the area, and they also take away something different than what I might take away, you might take away differently. That's good.
Right.
So why don't you tell us about some of the programs that you offer, if you would, in just a second. You want to talk about the sage or the rattle too?
Well, it's kind of all connected to the core of our mission.
Okay.
So we say our logo or a slogan, I guess it would be, is transforming consciousness, one extraordinary being at a time.
Okay.
It seems to me, and one of the quotes that we have in our opening scrolling photos on our webpage is from Krishnamurti, who was an Indian philosopher, and it says, "What you are, the world is. What you are, the world is. And without your transformation, there can be no transformation of the world." Okay. And as we can see, we are at a tipping point on this planet in terms of all the upheaval we're seeing politically, the upheaval we're seeing around the environment, the fact that we've pushed population to its limits. I mean, we really are at a crucial time on this planet. And I sometimes, as a human, can get overwhelmed and want to help in a big, big way. And what can I do? And I've been politically active and I've been environmentally active. But I think that the greatest healing comes one-on-one or in small groups where people can really, if people are going to get healed, become more whole, and transform what they believe, that does ripple out. And so our mission is to help people to transform their consciousness, whether those are adults coming for our shamanic training, which is an ongoing thing that goes for up to 3 years, or if it's kids coming for a camp, or if it's women coming to one of our weekend retreats. Those are all opportunities to step out of our grind or daily whatever, which is sometimes very comfortable. It's not like it's a bad thing, but to step out of our comfort zone and immerse ourselves in nature with like-minded individuals in a safe container can really transform the way you look at where you make decisions, how you live your life, where you spend your money, and all of those things trickle down into how we can start to change this crazy world.
Yeah, and I mean, and it changes each individual as well. I mean, it by communing with nature and coming to like Spirit Hollow, people can work on their stress levels too.
Exactly.
And sort of downgrade, if you will, from that hustle and bustle and got to do this, got to be here, got to do that. Because it's very difficult, because I know several years ago I was living out of 3 different schedule books.
It's crazy.
I've got to be here, I've got to be there, I've got to do this, I've got to do that. And that was probably about 20 years ago. And I mean, it was really stressful, and ended up having cancer surgery. And so now I've taken away the 3 schedule books, and I basically have 1, but I don't always pay attention to what's scheduled, because trying to lead a less stressful lifestyle, you just have to let go of that schedule book.
It's true.
So,
yeah, there's a lot of pressure on us
Yeah.
in this culture. A lot of pressure.
Yep. So, let's talk about.
Okay. Well, so the core of what we do is based in deep ecology, or understanding that human beings are not necessarily the top of the be all and end all in terms of consciousness and evolution, that nature itself is sentient and has incredible gifts for us. And we can tap into those gifts through some of the techniques that we teach at Spirit Hollow.
Okay.
And so the core of what we teach is in shamanism, which I can describe for a moment, which has to do with some of these tools.
Okay.
So shamanism is, and I work with core shamanism, which looks at the things that are in common, universal or near universal, all across the planet in shamanic cultures. It's not culture specific like a Peruvian shamanism or a Native American shamanism, but it's cross-cultural, meaning that we're looking at what techniques are in common, regardless of if you are in the rainforest or in Siberia or in North America or in Australia. And it's amazing because these techniques go back 40,000 years into the Upper Paleolithic period, and we know this through archaeological, remains and findings. And what we see is that when you get away all the bells and whistles of different cultures, the costuming or particular kinds of ceremony or ritual, what you see is that underneath that there are these core techniques, and that even though these people anciently had no actual contact with each other, they were still doing these same amazing things. They had the same worldview in terms of the cosmology of the universe. They had the same understanding of having tutelary or helping spirits, power animals, teachers that were outside of time. They also used some kind of monotonous percussion to alter the consciousness. Some cultures did use psychotropic plants, but 90% of the world's shamans use monotonous percussion. And that's just a drum that's beat at a very monotonous beat. It's not musically that interesting, but this is the method that we use. It's safe. There's nothing you have to ingest, and it alters your brain waves. And in that altered state, we can take a journey, and that is where we go and we get help and healing information for our people, or teach others to use these techniques to get their own personal connection to helpers and to questions, getting answers to questions. And so what we can see now that we have advanced medical technology is that if we hook somebody up to an EEG and we read their brain and we let them listen to a shamanic drum beat, we'll find that very quickly the brain will go from a beta state into an alpha state. Like within a few minutes. If you listen to that drum for longer, you'll get you into those deeper states, the delta and the theta states quicker than if you sat for meditation for a long, long time. So it's a quick method to alter the brain. It also shows that the left brain, which of course controls logic and balancing our checkbook and driving our car and doing math and figuring out problems, that side of our brain just totally goes to sleep. And yet the right brain just comes online. It just opens up that whole imagination realm.
Really?
And so that's a pretty cool thing.
Yeah, it sounds...
It also helps with immune response. So there's all kinds of studies that have been done now on shamanic drumming, but shamans 40,000 years ago didn't need to know that these methods worked. And so in my 20s, when I found shamanism, it felt to me like a path I could follow, because it wasn't taking anything from particular culture, and it was allowing me to have my own spiritual authority, meaning I didn't necessarily have to go to a book or a priest or a church. I could get my own two-way conversation and have my own tools and my own ability to answer questions. And then I pursued a path in becoming a shamanic healer and teacher through learning these techniques. So that's kind of the basis of what we do. And then we, of course, as you grow older, of course, things kind of turn and you get in little side paths going too. And I have some of those happening. But that's our basic kind of...
Now, with the drums, I mean, you had a certain beat there. Do you always do like a fast beat, or do you it's more of a fast beat all the time than a slower beat? Or?
Well, it depends on the purpose, but if you're doing a journey, which is where we would set you up and have you imagine a place in nature that you've been to that you love. And we would say, this is your jumping off point. And from here you can take a journey down into the lower world, which is kind of like going down through the looking glass, or going down into the nature realms, or going to the upper world, maybe going like Jack and the Beanstalk, or going up the yellow brick road like a wizard, or like into the what is that? What's the movie? A Wizard of Oz.
Wizard of Oz.
So that these are actual realms that now quantum physics, of course, tells us that there are parallel universes, right? And that there is no space-time continuum, that we can access the past, present, and future all now. Yeah. These journeys let us do that. And whether you were, again, in Russia or America or South America, if you were journeying, you were going, interestingly, to some of the same places for the same purposes, which were healing, teaching, helping people to move through life. And so if I was going to take you on a journey, I would use a particular drum beat that I just did, which is just that very basic. And that actually has a cycle to it that alters you into that shamanic state of consciousness, which allows you to see with the heart, or see with the strong eye, and see, it's like dreaming, active dreaming. So it's like being in a dream, but you can control what you do. Like, okay, I don't really want to be here, so I'm going to go over there. Whereas in your dream, sometimes it feels as if it's just happening, and you can't control it. And so it's a way of entering that imaginary world. People say to me, is it in your mind? Or is it out there somewhere? And I say, who cares? As long as I'm getting answers to my questions, I'm seeing results in people's lives for whom I'm doing this work. It doesn't matter to me if it's something I made up or if it's something that's external to me, because to me, the outer is the inner anyway. And if the mind in that right brain opening is the portal into the universe, great. If it's all in my mind, then my mind is vast. Yeah. So to me, those little details, I don't get hung up on those anymore. I look for results, and I look for, is it helping? And so the drum beat would be pretty monotonous on purpose to keep you like, and you could use a didgeridoo that was blown, if you were in Australia, in a monotonous way. You could use
that's like a horn.
Yeah, like a big, you could use a bow, the string that was plucked. Some shamans talk about journeying to the sound of the rushing waterfalls because it's monotonous. And so that monotonous beat does help the brain to shift into that kind of more expanded state of consciousness. But to let people know that it's time to come back in a journey, because you're going to have your eyes closed and you're going to be lying down with an eye covering. Native shamans would be dancing and drumming and journeying, but most of us, because we're so steeped in that left brain culture that we live, we need like a little bit of like lie down, cover up your eyes. We need to be very quiet. So there's a signal to come back, and then there's a faster beat to kind of come back and return.
And ground you type thing.
Yeah.
So the drums, I also saw that you offer like a drum making workshop.
Yeah, so that's happening. There's one actually happening this weekend, which is closed. So this is a woman, Jane King, who just one of her life works is to create more of these kind of native drums. And so this is actually a mylar drum. It's made out of a type of plastic that you would use because they stay in tune no matter what the weather. This drum, which is made from deer skin, local deer hides, is probably flat. You hear how it's kind of flat?
Yeah.
It's because it's animal skin, it's porous, and so on a humid day or humid week, you're not going to have a tight drum. So most people that do this work will have their skin drum, and then they'll also have a backup drum that would always work. Also for people who are vegan and don't want to use an animal, there's lots of options for drumming. So this woman who's coming this weekend, she creates drums from scratch, so people will come, and she uses different kinds of animals, and I requested that it be deer because I like to connect with the animals that are local. And so she's going to come, and a group of people will gather for the day, and they'll do it as a ceremony. So they won't just be like, doing their, and they'll be fun, but they'll also be doing like working with making offerings to the spirit of the deer, giving gratitude, offerings to the spirit of the wood that made the hoop. So it's done in that kind of a respectful way for all the materials, and then it's charged and given power, so that when you use it, you've really got that kind of personal connection to your tool, you know.
This is, I've said it before, but it's really, truly fascinating. And, you know, you're working with nature the whole time, basically, you know? That's
Absolutely.
good.
Yeah.
Good. So, also with the shamanism, I noticed that there's one program that you offer that work with, is it the dying?
Yes.
Okay, and that's coming up in September.
Right.
So is it sort of like a hospice type thing?
It is. It's actually kind of a spiritual hospice. So as I was speaking earlier, one of those classic or core techniques that goes across cultures is what we call the psychopomp. Not psycho, crazy, but psycho meaning soul.
Okay.
And pomp, not pump, but pomp meaning conductor. So psychopomp is the conductor of souls. And that is one of the classic roles of the shaman, regardless of whatever culture, again, is to help the soul move through life. For example, this workshop is on helping people at the moment of dying, or people who have died, or those who are losing a loved one, working with that soul aspect. So it is like hospice, only it's taking it even further and making sure that the person gets kind of safely out
to the other side.
Yeah, because there are, you know, if you die in a very quick or sudden or traumatic way, there is confusion around death sometimes. And so one of these roles is just to make sure, you know, when there are tragedies in the world where people die suddenly, often a group of us will do a journey there and see if we can help with those traumatized souls to see if they need a little help getting out. And you know, so this is one of those classic roles. And in the beginning of life too, if you've ever been at birth or given birth, you know that it can be a little touch and go sometimes.
Yeah.
And in a traditional culture, the shaman was a spiritual midwife, not just at birth, but to help that soul kind of move through his or her life. So making sure that baby's soul gets fully into the body. Then at those points where we're making that turn from child to adolescent, from adolescent to teen, from teen to young adult, from single person to married, those rites of passage times are also times that the shaman can help tend the soul. And you know, one of my teachers, Bill Plotkin from the Animas Institute, he has a couple books, and one of the books talks about how we are in this culture really stuck in early adolescence in terms of our evolution of consciousness. So when you think about what's going on in the world, sure, we all are children, and then we have middle childhood, and then we have early adolescence and late adolescence. But as a culture, largely, we are still like middle schoolers.
Really? Okay.
In terms of, I mean, look at what's in charge in the world, and look at what some of the values are, and look at what some of the competition is, and he says that we need to help mature each other and mature this culture. And so one of the things that we like to do at Spirit Hollow is our camps, which just to try to help children to have some more tools to help them on the, not just a spiritual level, but to connect with their own inner knowing, to connect with each other in a very meaningful way, to connect with elders. I'm starting to call myself an early elder now. To connect with elders who are trying to help them move through life, as we would have done if we lived in more of a communal, tribal culture. We would have helped people to move through life. So that psychopomp or conductor of souls role is to help people through life. And my friend Robert, who is teaching that particular workshop, he's also my co-teacher for Seeing with the Heart, which is our longer ongoing shamanic training. He's also the board president at Spirit Hollow, because we are also a 501c3, a nonprofit. He has a particular interest in around death and dying, and helping create ritual ceremony around that, so that if somebody is dying and knows they're dying, to be able to be with that person, but also to help them to come to grips with their death, but also to help them to maybe even plan their whole ceremony that they want to have as a real honor to their life, and have them do some unfinished business with their loved ones, and help the loved ones all get okay with this process, because as you know, holding on to people is a big thing if somebody doesn't want their loved one to go.
And I think our society today doesn't like to talk about death.
Absolutely.
And if you have a loved one that has passed away, and you talk about that person, everybody sort of like looks at you as though you've got 3 screws loose in your brain.
I agree.
You know, it's not to dwell on it, but you remember these people. They were a part of your life.
And you miss them.
Yeah. And I mean, I've been to like my cousin's house, and after dinner is over, they'll ask questions about, you know, death and dying and stuff. And it's not that I know a lot about it, but studying and learning, and you get people to talk about it. And I think it helps us to confront, you know, our journey better.
It's part of our journey. And from our point of view, there's a beautiful quote from Chief Seattle, and it is, "There is no death, only a change of worlds." And I think that certain cultures do death better than we do it. And we're afraid, and we hold on, and we keep people alive at all costs. And perhaps it's time to let them go. You know, I just had one of my dearest animal companions, one of my dogs died about 2 weeks ago after being diagnosed with lymphoma just a month before. And I have had these 2 dogs, twin brothers, had them since they were 5 weeks old, and they were only 8.5. And so it was very difficult. But what was beautiful about what he did, I was away the night before I came home. He died. My boyfriend was there, my children. He went out under a lilac bush that was in bloom, lay down, and left his body.
And it was
there was no vet intervention. There was no medication. He was just like, this body's done, and I'm going to walk right out of my suit. And it was like such an incredible teaching about holding on, and just like, that's the way to die, right? Go ahead and lie under a blooming lilac bush, which smells awesome, and just leave your body. And of course, now I miss him, and we're all kind of still mourning him, but what a beautiful teaching in how we could be letting go and realizing that we're just switching form, you know?
And his soul is still with you. I mean, you know?
Absolutely,
And we just have to learn that...
not to hold them.
Yeah. And what we are doing here on Earth, these are just temporary suits, if you will.
I love that,
So,
right.
Yeah. So what is your typical summer camp like with the kids?
This is some of the most important work I think we do, is our work we do with the young ones. You know, I do feel a sense of moral obligation to the kids. We have handed, and I have 2 teenagers who've grown up doing these camps, but I feel that given the state of the world, in particular my heartbreak is the environment and climate change, and the way we've created this problem that is not so much a concern about the earth as much as it's a concern about human beings being able to survive on a changed earth. So I feel that given this kind of set of things we've handed our kids, like, here, we've screwed it up pretty badly, you take it now.
Fix it.
Here, it's yours now. We're going to go into retirement or whatever. I feel like giving children tools to navigate these uncharted seas that we're asking them to go into. We don't know what's going to be like to grow food in this environment, to have climate refugees, to have, you know, displaced people, and you know, all the kind of things that could happen with rising seas, etc. We need to give them some tools so that they can get through. I believe we can. And so one of the things I hope to do is to offer them ways to connect with nature more. I believe that if we're going to live in a changed environment, one of our tools can be to work closely with the place, work closely with the spiritual aspects of nature, as our ancestors did, and as people who still live close to nature do. They learn from the plants. They learn from the place. They are taught by the place where to grow things, how to grow them. And when you work in a co-creative way with your place, amazing things will happen. I have so many magical stories like that about Spirit Hollow and about working with the spiritual aspect of the place. So to give the children the ability to connect with nature in that way, to trust their inner guidance and not think they have to always be on a device to get information, to use sacred, primitive technologies in a sense, to get amazing information that you're not Googling, to connect in authentic communication. So we sit in circles and we use something called the Way of Counsel, which is passing a talking piece. and only the person who has the talking piece gets to speak. There's no crosstalk. It's deep listening, deep respect, speaking from the heart. And nobody's standing at the head of the class. Everybody's in a circle. So there's giving them techniques that are about authentic communication, teaching them to use their bodies in nature, teaching them how to identify trees, how to look for animal tracks, what foods can be eaten in the woods, to get out and use their body, hike, and to really make art. Write some poetry. We just have a great time. And originally we had Spirit Quest Camp, which was for and is for boys and girls. And then we would kind of split off one afternoon to just do some stuff in a group of girls and do some stuff in a group of boys, so that, because, you know, regardless of how we want to go for kind of a balance of genders, there are certain things girls want to sit around and do, and boys want to get out and they want to hike the mountain. And so, not that girls don't want to do that and boys don't want to do the other, but out of that grew our Goddess Camp for Girls, which is about kind of getting really into the sacred feminine. And we will do a lot with body image and self-esteem and healthy eating. We'll also do ceremony dressed in your favorite kind of clothes that make you feel authentically beautiful. We will do, you know, dream journeys. We do ceremony, dancing by the stream. We make food together. We just have a great time. And then there's Warrior Camp, which was co-created with me and a couple of young men who've worked for me for several years. And by warrior, we mean like authentic warriors, and we, not warriors who want to kill things, but warriors who want to be in their power and who want to respect each other and want to be into their emotional intelligence, want to respect women and girls, as well as go hike the mountain and carve staffs and make spears, and so we're trying to give people these tools and have them, and also just have a great time, you know.
This sounds amazing.
It is fun, and it's great to be able to run around with kids in the woods in the summer, and that's my work for the summer. So I really look forward to that.
Now, do you have them like freaking out because they can't have the cell phone and the computer and the iPads and?
Not so much. I mean, most of the camps are day camps, so they do go home at the end of the day, except for there's a Thursday night sleepover. But the teen camp, that is 6 nights they stay at Spirit Hollow, and we have tent cabins with bunks in them. And we cook together, and we really get like a tribe. And we only let them use their device while we're cooking dinner for like from 4 to 6, and that's it. And they know that, and boy, I'll tell you, at 4 they're like, but then they know it's going to go off, and that's just how it is. And I think they appreciate just having that break, because it does exhaust us, I think, to be so into that like device. So it's a good break.
You know, because I had done retreats before with teenagers, and one of the things we did, I worked as a youth minister, and when they came in at the beginning, we collected all of the watches. And we covered all the faces of the clock.
Oh, that's great, yeah.
And it was like total freak out. It's like, what do you mean I can't have my watch? You know?
And that was just a watch.
Yeah.
Imagine if you tried to take their iPhone away.
But anyways, so it's a really good learning experience for them not to have to depend
and
on
the
these
connections that they make are so authentic and so deep that it just, I think, you know, by the first or second day, they're already immersed in that kind of outside of time space.
You know, this program is basically, you know, getting to know Tracy and what Spirit Hollow has to offer us. So it sort of is giving you, the audience, a lot of information. And I'm finding it fascinating. And I've got a few more questions for Tracy about a couple of other programs that they have. So bear with us. Here we go.
Thank you. Thanks for watching.
The October, you have a Frankenstein's Monster and Stone Soup Saturday?
So this is our attempt through Robert, my president of the board, and the one who's doing the Psycho Pomp workshop, to reach out to men. As you may know, I bet a lot of your guests on your show are women. I bet a lot of the people that you know who are in the kind of alternative health or healing fields are women. And so I think the attempt here is, and in our shamanic programs, I would say, and this is nationally kind of, I think, reflected at most wellness centers and retreat centers, is you have 75 to 80% of your participants as women. And so we're trying to kind of open that up and see where, and so Robert has been having a couple meetings with some local men to try to create and shape what do men need and how can men be more spiritual or grow in that way, and what do they want. And so this is his attempt to kind of reach out to men, and it's a free event open to the public, and it has to do with men coming together, bringing not just something for the soup, but bringing something to offer to the group.
Okay.
So that they can begin to unravel, you know, that relationship with their creator or with their sacred, just like Frankenstein was trying to unravel his relationship with his creator. And so it's just a metaphor for, I think what he's been finding is that a lot of men want to do something physical as well. They don't want to just sit around in a circle and talk. They want to build something or make something or do something. And so that's going to be incorporated, and we're perhaps going to do some trail marking and cutting that day. I mean, I won't be present. It'll be just for the men. So this is his attempt to reach out more to the men. And I've been doing the goddess retreats for women for the last 5 or 6 years, and those are always closed and always well attended. And so we really feel like we want everybody to be included, and we want to serve that larger population and include the men.
Very good idea. Because I think you know, with like a men's day or a men's weekend or something like that, I think it incorporates them into the grand scheme of things. Sometimes they probably might think that they're too macho or athletic or something to get involved with this, and I think it's a great thing for them.
Yeah, well, I think it's also a little fear of the unknown as well. True. I mean, we have found that in teaching people to do the journey, which I was describing earlier, men typically have more of a separation between the two sides of the brain, and you can see this in scientific research. You know, we do have two brains, and they're connected by the corpus callosum, and there needs to be jumping back and forth between those. And I'm not a scientist, but I do know that. And men have a more developed left brain, typically, not always, of course, than women. Women have a more integrated approach between their two sides of their brain. And so I think for men, it's a little more difficult to journey and to not think they're making it up or to feel it's a success. And for women, it's even though I feel that we have got to break the patriarchy and allow women our power, I think men have also suffered in a patriarchal culture. And certainly a lot of the men that I know and love are more wanting to connect more in their hearts, and they're wanting to be allowed to express their emotions in ways that aren't just the typical ways of being masculine. And yet there aren't a lot of models for how you do that. And so, you know, part of this is just allowing and creating a space for men to explore and to connect with something greater and more community minded.
Great idea, really. One of the other things that I saw on your site is like a sweat lodge type thing. What is a typical sweat lodge experience like?
So I have a woman, Maggie Murphy, who has been participating in sweat lodges for 25 years or more. Sweat lodges are often most known in their Native American form, but they are also have been done all through the Northern Hemisphere. So even the Scandinavian sauna was originally a sacred place to go and pray in the heat. And so it's a ceremony that happens once a month, usually on a Sunday. Those are again free and open to the public, and the dates are on the website. And you basically come into a wigwam type structure that's covered with blankets. Hot stones that have been heated in a fire for about 2 hours till they're red hot are brought in and put in the center. Water is poured. It's like a sauna, but you're on the earth. And people are singing, drumming, praying, purifying both their body and their spirit. And 4 rounds are done, one for each of the 4 directions, and at which point the flaps are open. More stones are brought in. People can get out and come back if they need to, if it gets too hot. But so my ex-husband used to do those, and then when he moved on, Maggie took that whole thing over, and she does it with a lot of integrity and beauty. So
that's cool. It's very good.
Yeah. My friend in Ohio said, it's just a hot prayer circle.
Okay.
Not quite, but a little bit like that.
Well, speaking of hot, I know that this past weekend, Memorial Day weekend, you also had like the fire walking with Stephanie Foy.
Yes.
Was there? What is that like? I mean, do other people get involved with, is it like walking on stones or?
It's walking on hot coals.
Okay.
Actually from a fire.
Okay.
And so Stephanie is a certified fire walk instructor with 11 years of experience.
Okay.
So she's walked on fire thousands of times. And we've been doing fire walks at Spirit Hollow with Stephanie for probably 10 years. And it's not just something you would try at home.
Right, right.
So she has techniques that build up your own ability to use your mind over fear.
All right.
And so the fire is lit in a ceremonial way. It's a big fire, bigger than this table, 6 to 8 feet of a square with logs.
Okay.
Everybody participates in creating the fire with putting a prayer and intention. And the fire is lit, and then somebody acts as the fire tender while Stephanie and the participants go into the yurt or the workshop space. And they do a bunch of exercises to build up their ability to break through fear. And nobody who comes is required to walk on the fire. It's if you don't want to, certainly you don't have to.
Right.
So the fire burns down for like 2 hours, and then once it's just coals, basically, the coals are raked out until they're nice and smooth. And it's like a 6 to 8 foot kind of walk.
Okay.
And then you walk with intention, like I'm walking for this person, or I'm walking to break through this fear, or I'm hoping to transform this. And you've raised your energy to meet the fire. This is the thinking. And therefore you don't get burned because you are focused, you're in your power, and you're breaking through. And so it's a very powerful visual and physical way to focus your energy and break through things. And because you can say, well, if I walked on fire, what else can I do in my life without being held back by fear, which is one of the things that holds a lot of us back, is the fear of the unknown, or the fear of failure, or the fear of, oh, I'm not good enough. You know, we all have those messages that we've embodied since the time we were probably little.
Yeah. Very interesting.
It's
because,
very powerful.
It's really wonderful. It is. Well, we've got a few more minutes before we have to wrap up. And can you just tell our viewers what the sage smudge is? A lot of people are wondering, like, what does sage have to do with this? And I know from experience working with an energy healer in the Wells Paulid area, you know, like when you go to her, she has sage, and she does a smudge to, like, is it to clear?
Yes.
And make this space.
So this is white sage, which grows in the out west. And most cultures burn some kind of something to clear the energy, also to signal now we're entering sacred space. Because the smell in the, you know how when you smell a certain smell from childhood, like baking bread, you're back at your grandmother's house. So there's signals to the consciousness. Now we're going to shift out of our ordinary consciousness into sacred space. So that's part of it. And the other part is that smudging, which is just burning it and kind of, waving the smoke around the person's body or around your own body, is meant to clear out just the gunk. We have energy bodies around us, and we do pick up. The best illustration of this I have is when you ride on an airplane and you get off the airplane, or at least I do, and I feel like yuck. I don't know, the air is kind of yucky, but also just bumping into so many people's emotional energy fields that it feels like smudging would be a great thing to do after a plane trip. Just to clear you out and prepare you for the sacred space. And so different cultures would maybe use different herbs, but this is one that is kind of native to America.
And the significance of the rattle?
It's just like the drum. So, mine is this is a rattle I made. The owl is the totem of Spirit Hollow because we live in prime barred owl habitat. And so we're always hearing the owls, we're seeing the owls. And for me, it's a personally It's the animal that I use to do healing work for others, which is another thing I do at Spirit Hollow is personal one-on-one healing sessions, which you can read about on the website. So like you said, you have some fox around you, and you might have a little fox on your dashboard or on your computer screen, and for me, it's the owl. But using the rattle, just like using the drum, that same kind of monotonous beat, to invoke the spirits, to shift your consciousness. So I work with a combination of rattles, drums. I also sing and whistle, and just kind of spontaneously working that way.
Wow.
So after 25 years, I've got lots of little tricks and tools in my tool belt. Yeah.
That's good. Well, for the last 50 minutes, Tracy Forrest from the Spirit of Hollow in Shasberry has been telling us about the different works that they do there, what their mission is, and giving us, oh my heavens, a plethora of really good things that you can experience by going there. There are a lot of free workshops that you have. There are some workshops that there's a fee for. And I do believe that I read that there are scholarships that are available as well.
Yes.
So if you are on a fixed income or don't think you can afford it, you can always be in contact with Tracy and her board or whoever, and like apply for a scholarship.
Absolutely.
Spirit Hollow again is on Shasberry Hollow Road. And I say it's in Shasberry.
It is in Shasberry. I pay taxes in Shasberry, but our mailing address is North Bennington.
So okay.
You know how that is.
Yeah. And you can get a hold of Tracy at 802-447-3895. Or you can email her.
If you just go to the website, there's a easy contact for the email, too, if you don't want to give that long address.
Sure. And it's what,
www.spirithollow.org.
Okay, very good. Thank you. And if you forget all of that sort of good stuff, you can always get a hold of me here on Monday, Wednesdays, or Fridays at 802-442-8868, and I can put you in contact with Tracy. So I hope you have enjoyed our mind-picking event with Tracy today. Again, I want to remind you of the audience, if you have any serious illnesses or anything like that, talk to your primary care physician before you try something new to, make sure that it's okay for you to do. A lot of these programs at Spirit Hollow, are really great and can be very helpful to people.
Absolutely.
And I would like to invite you to come back to see us again. And I'd like to invite Tracy to come back and see us again because this has been a whirlwind hour.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're very
thank you
welcome.
all for watching. And please come to Spirit Hollow and see what beautiful things we have to offer, including the beautiful land that it is. Yes. And
I spoke to Tracy before we started the program. She is going to send in things for the bulletin board at Cat TV that she's offering at Spirit Hollow. So if you, don't always get to the computer to check out the website and you're watching Channel 15 or 16 with a community bulletin board here at Cat TV, in the future, you may see different offerings from Spirit Hollow. So I'd like to thank you again, everybody, and come back and see us again. Thank you.
Thank you.